Hello and welcome back to Veteran Instincts. A little later than promised on last episode, we are bringing you the first of a series of games from the Firecast Cup. This one is a round one matchup between two South England locals and players that Lloyd and I are always scared to face in tournaments. Firestorm Squadron's own Ed Gold. Hello, Ed.
Hi.
And Eagle Squadron's best player, without a shadow of a doubt, George Barker. Hello, George.
How's it going?
It's going well, and thank you very much for coming on, guys. We can see you placing ships here, and we're looking at a lot of gas clouds on the table. I'm sure I will criticise you for that later on in the game. George, why don't we start with you? Talk us through your list. Tell us a bit about why you chose it, and given this was quite a big tournament, is this something that you've had a decent number of practice games with?
No. So what I had been practicing was a rebel list that Lloyd very conveniently smashed, and then a friend of mine smashed the night before. And so I was like, oh no, all my confidence has gone from that list. So I better just go back to flying Republic. And I felt like Republic are tricky to field something that feels great all the time. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take that as a challenge. I'll take the hard option. I like the ETAs. I want to try and make them work because they're cool. I like the prequels. And so I was like, well, I'll take the two ETAs. Loaded them up slightly differently because when they first dropped, I was kind of the Predator school of thought of I want to get rerolls, and then started encountering you and Lloyd with the marksmanship auto blaster build. Was a bit skeptical at the start, and then it's like, you know what, I'll just take one of each. And then usually I try and go for like arcs or something a bit beefier to kind of fill up the second roll, but just sort of points worked out, and I thought I'd give 3 torrents a go just because I hadn't actually run 3 of them before. Like there was the old 2 and 2 7B regen stuff, and so I figured like 3 ships as opposed to like an arc and a torrent might be more useful just because it's a high ship count kind of meta at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you that extra gun, extra blocker. And I like it. And that's exactly where my mind went as well. Obviously, dropping down from the 7Bs to the ETAs gives you the points for that extra ship. And we'll see how much value you get out of that, I suppose. Ed, over to you. George has said that it's hard to get a Republic list that feels really strong. I think I'd agree with him, but we've got 2 on the table here. Talk us through your list and kind of how you decided that this is what you were going to run.
So similar to George, I was practicing a rebel list with a couple of A-wings with Hera. I kept on getting smashed, so I was like, right, I'll revert back to something I know. And I played quite a bit of Warthog. I've always liked arcs, so I was kind of drawn to the Republic, and Warthog was quite a good piece. And I saw this list with the 3 Y-wings with the Proton Torps, and I got kind of excited because I like rolling lots of dice. So I thought, yeah, this suits me quite well. And I've had quite a few games with it earlier in the year, and I kind of enjoyed it. So I thought I'd jump back to that because my experiment during the week before failed.
Nice. And we can see you've both brought gas clouds. Maybe we'll bounce back over to George. Ed's list here is the kind of list that you run into at most tournaments, and it's horrific. And I hope you don't mind me saying it. It always feels like this probably isn't going to win the tournament unless it's incredibly well flown. But I cannot think of anything I'd less like to face, at this point in the tournament. Those Proton Torps are terrifying. How are you going to kind of deal with those?
Yeah, so I saw this list and was like, oh god, and I basically started jittering because I had a very large cup of coffee throughout this game, and then the stress of just don't get Proton Torped, the Proton Torps will kill your ETAs. And so it was basically like, okay, I need to get the torrents into a position where they can get blocks. The problem is the blocks aren't going to stop the locks coming out, but at the very least they can hopefully prevent focus tokens that will mean they're double modded. And the fewer Y-wings that take locks means that hopefully if the Torps do go off, they're having to think twice about actually spending the lock if they want to pass on the lock. The problem with the torrents, though, is you basically have to think about you doing the 1 bank barrel rolls to kind of line up, but your only fast move really is the 4 straight because your 3 bank is red. And so I was basically like, I need to get them into a position where I can go fast and be in a position to basically get them in front of the Y-wings without that very awkward range 3 engagement where they get torped to pieces.
And we can see it looks like you're aiming for this kind of channel down the centre of the board in terms of being able to do that. Ed, George mentioned it there that you didn't necessarily need actions to get your torps off, and I probably cut you off a little bit early, but why don't you talk us through the kind of upgrades on these Y-wings and explain why it is that you might not need to take actions with all of them?
Yeah, so all 3 Y-wings are the same. They've got dorsal turrets, proton torpedoes, the R4 astromech to ditch that stress, because I flew this without the R4 astromechs and it wasn't. Well, I realised that was a mistake, so obviously went to the R4 astromech and then synchronised console to pass the lock. So it means that they can all basically share the locks between each other. So if one of them's got a lock and it doesn't spend it, you can send it over to one of the other ones. And then on Warthog, I've got Wolf Pack, which means as soon as one of them's getting shot, I can take a strain and get a lock, and then pass it around as I need to. And then I've got thread tracers as well on Warthog, just to try and, if I can, get that initial kind of alpha off where I get all 3 of them double modded.
I really like the addition of Wolfpack in this list, actually, because it gives you that extra way of getting locks. Without it, how reliable, I suppose, do you find thread tracers? Because any munitions list I've run where you're relying on thread tracers to hit, I find it has the real potential to just fail completely, at which point your entire alpha strike is blunted.
Yeah, so it works quite nicely on Warthog because you can use his ship ability to re-roll. So you can take a focus and then re-roll with his ability. So it's double modded thread tracers as well. So yeah, there's a chance it might miss, but give myself the best opportunity to get it to hit.
Absolutely. I think actually it's one of those where, because you have other ways of getting those locks, the thread tracers kind of make your opponent make bad decisions or force them to choose between bad decisions, right? Where they're having potentially to spend mods to avoid a thread tracer, which doesn't save them any damage, but stops you setting up further attacks. So it's all just about giving your opponent, the ability to make wrong decisions.
Yeah, that's true. And then you've got the Wolfpack there just as a backup. So if your thread tracers don't come off, you're still going to be getting 1 or 2 locks during the engagement phase.
Yeah, I really like the addition of Wolfpack, actually. I think it makes the list have a lot more utility, and that sort of built-in sort of obsolescence almost in case something does go wrong.
Yeah, and Sync Console's an interesting upgrade, isn't it? I think when it first came out, everyone looked at it, decided it was bad, and kind of has ignored it since. But the key piece in this list, in more ways than one, is that lat, under normal circumstances, single modding or maybe even not having any mods at all for your Proton Torp would be a terrible idea. If you want to fire multiple Proton Torps, you cannot spend that target lock and you're left with no modifications. But that's where that lat comes in again with that reroll ability, allowing you to have the rerolls, potentially have the focus, and still have your unspent target lock to kind of pass on to a mate. So I think the synergy in the list is really nice. Looks like we're going to be engaging next turn. Very jousty at this stage. George, you've managed to get... Is that Obi-Wan out there kind of on a flank? Are you happy about this engagement and how it's looking at the moment?
I was feeling a bit nervous. I was mostly thinking about the torrents because yellow and red, basically any move that they're going to do that's useful here will just leave them sitting in kind of torpable range. And it was only really when green came up that I was like, okay, if I barrel roll him here, I think I can hopefully cover yellow and red with a 4 straight barrel roll that hopefully should put him in the way of anything that turns in too much. Might not cover the 1 straight, in which case, he's out there looking like a chicken, ready to get plucked. Yeah, the torrents are in a slightly awkward position. I'd been thinking about doing the 1 bank barrel roll so that they're all pointing 4 straight. OB, yeah, it's that ace thing of he's out on a flank, just trying to dance around a rock. If it turns up into OB, could all go wrong, but if OB survives, then everyone else is positioned well.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like you're not quite as spread out perhaps as you would like, and to make Ed sort of have to choose hard to one direction or another. Ed, coming to Smash, is there a specific ship that you're looking at as the first ship you want to take off? Because George is running sort of an ace mini swarm variant here, I suppose. He's dropped almost 1 ship from the mini swarm to add another ace, which is, that must be a variant I really like on it. The ace mini swarm normally wants you to play the game of trade some of your ships for the mini swarm and leave the aces to clear up. Did you have that in mind, or are you just accepting the torrents are going to be easy to take off the table and you should aim for those first?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to get rid of the torrents because I knew trying to pin down the aces would be tricky. I maybe get a couple of shots off them and they kind of disappear. So I thought that the torrents were going to get in the way and be annoying, preventing me getting the action. So I was kind of open to whatever the kind of target opportunity came up, really. I did have a quick think about going for OB, but I thought if I went across for OB, I would be in a bad position for the rest of the game. So I kind of settled on what are you going to say I'm going to do now.
Yeah, and I think that's a really sensible decision. OB's in a super nice place here, right? The 2 straightforward looks like it will be behind the gas cloud for anything that does turn towards him, and it gives him the ability to then boost in if you have gone more towards the center of the board. So that OB's position is really nice. But conversely, Anakin, I think, is in a tricky position. I would be very worried about being aggressive with Anakin here, and I think if I was you, George, I'd be thinking about the hard turns to the left to tuck him in behind this central gas cloud and maybe think about him coming into the fight in 2 or 3 turns time rather than now.
Yeah, I think I put him there basically because there's like these 3 lanes here, and so it's like, well, if I put an option in each lane, there's 3 choices as opposed to do you turn one way, do you turn the other ways. And yeah, I think I can't remember, but it does seem like I did sort of go chicken out a bit, tuck him back in behind the torrents, who are basically just there to screen for Anakin.
I really like that barrel roll because I just kind of wasn't really anticipating that. I'd forgotten about that kind of pre-movability, and it does mean that you could come straight here and still have cover for that cloud. And obviously, with the ability to barrel again next turn, it doesn't really matter if you end up sort of pointing straight at the cloud. And I think there's a lot to be said. If Anakin was out in the other corner of the board, then Ed's choice is easy, right? He turns in for the torrents, which are the only thing that he can get a decent shot on. The fact that he's closer and in the fight means that he did have to make a decision between these two lanes, either side of this kind of central gas cloud. And Ed, we can see you going for kind of more conservative moves here. I really like the bank with that red Y-wing. I think he would have not had his front arc on had he not done that. And the other two have got kind of choice of targets. Taking the focuses here, did you consider taking locks and making a choice now about what you were going to fire at, or are they better off with focuses and then threatening the aces if they were to get into a bad position?
I think I just look sort of a little bit on autopilot here, where I was almost looking to take the focus because I know the locks are going to come in the engagement phase. So yeah, I don't think I really thought to take a lock because the option's open, as you say, in case Anakin did come in, then I could maybe get something on him.
I think I was just deliberating the R2A6 thing here.
That's a droid I've used a fair bit, but it's probably not really a metaphor. So it gets referred to as the Juno bot, which is super unhelpful if you didn't play first edition. Can you talk us through what that allows you to do?
Yeah, basically it's when you reveal your dial, you can increase or decrease the speed of the maneuver by 1, as long as you have that maneuver on your dial. So for the ETAs, it's great with hard turns because you have all 3. So you just, whenever you're turning, you just dial in a hard 2, you wait, you see what happens, and then you choose between any of your 3 hard turns. Similarly, like if you're like, oh, I might do a speed 2 here, you just dial in the 3, and then you have the choice of how fast you want to go at the time. And with the ETAs, where you're really struggling for post-move reposition, that little extra is super useful, just because so often, unless the boost is taking you out of all arcs entirely, you just have to take the evade and sit there and just hope that your move was good enough.
Because that was interesting there, because you didn't take the shot on Warthog because you knew you'd get the lock.
Yeah, but so Anakin has a shot here, but if I shoot Warthog, I take 3 torpedoes and Warthog shot. I'm behind the gas tower with an evade, but I'd rather not chance it, so Anakin declines to shoot.
We spoke a bit earlier about how dangerous those torps are for your ETAs. From where you were, this is absolutely the safest place to be, right? Behind the gas cloud is the only place at which you can get 4 dice against the torps. Otherwise, any torp you take during this game into an ETA, if it rolls 4 results, you are taking a crit as your best case scenario.
Yeah, like with the evade, I have like a reasonable chance of surviving 1 torp, but the crits are what's going to get you.
Absolutely, and ETAs die with crits, right? If you take a panicked pilot, that ship is essentially dead next turn.
Yeah, and even if it's a crit that you can flip down with an action, you don't have that action spare. You're not the Delta where you can force reposition somewhere safe and clear it. You're kind of stuck.
Yeah, and that was super clear thinking. Seeing this list across the table, I would not have been aware that Anakin shooting there was such a bad idea, but probably saved his life. We've had a few dice rolls here. The Obi-Wan shot, because Anakin didn't shoot, was the first of the game. He got 2 hits into 1 evade, so has plinked a shield off of Warthog already. We have got Warthog electing to take the range 1 shot into this green V19. I think that's sensible, given the position of Anakin, given the lack of target locks and lack of torps to follow up. He's not likely to take any damage.
I did think about the thread tracers, but he's he's got 4 dice with 2 evades, so it's unlikely to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super sensible. You'd have been incredibly lucky, wouldn't you, to get those thread tracers off. And then we get the first V19 shot here. So it took damage from Warthog and now has rolled a single hit, blinking 1 through onto, is that the red Y-wing you've been shooting at there, George?
They're putting everything into Warthog.
That makes sense.
In this list, I have to just put all the damage into Warthog if I can, because anything else doesn't die and still takes a shot. So
yeah, and we're getting better position really. Not getting the wolf pack triggering enough really in this engagement.
Yeah, I was feeling quite lucky because obviously, like the 2 torrents that I think that felt like were at risk of being torped a lot were not in Warthog's arc, so the LAAT rerolls wouldn't apply to them
as well. Yeah,
because Warthog's, he's applying the death save, he's applying the target locks, he's applying the thread tracers, he's applying the rerolls, so he's kind of applying everything and is the most expensive piece. Yeah,
and it's going okay so far. He just took a direct hit. These torrents rolling okay so far. Another crit coming in.
Yeah, it was a weird engagement. Like it was just sort of rolling 1 crit and having it go through like 3 times.
I got double direct hit. Yeah, I was quite sad at this point. I was like, oh, this hasn't gone well.
I was like, the torrents are in a terrible position, but the damage has gone right.
Yeah, absolutely. That is another direct hit. So another single crit going through, another direct hit. And Warthog is already down to 4 hull. But we do have the return fire from the Y-Wings now. So this is going into that green torrent, already taken a hit. Takes a further hit crit. Another direct hit, third in a row. And that is all but one shot. So 1 damage done from Warthog, and then a primary from the Y-Wings. Who needs Proton Torps? Just erases the V19. Going to roll on here into yellow shot. That certainly is evens things up a little bit. I agree that Warthog's taken an incredible amount of damage, but erasing a V19 is lucky, especially one that had an evade coming into this turn.
Yeah, that hit from that red Y-Wing was pretty good. I got lucky again here.
More good dice, hit crit into blanks. Another direct hit, shall we see? And it is. Oh my god.
Yeah, some spicy. That's the thing. We were both rolling or getting our attacks through. It just as the person with less health on the board, it's not a situation that favors me.
Absolutely, and another hit crit, and that's gone through, and that is a second dead V19. Man alive! I think they've just taken 10 damage from 10 incoming dice.
So I was like, oh, well, that's how it goes, I guess.
Lloyd, what the hell?
Well, we said earlier that with an Ace Mini Swarm, you're trying to trade the Swarm for something. And I mean, it looks bad, right? There's still 3 untouched Proton Torp Y-Wings running about, but that Warthog is bleeding pretty heavily. Obviously, you're never going to be happy with that trade when you lose 2 torrents to Y-Wing primaries. That's pretty unexpected. But the board situation isn't as terrible as it looks. Obi looks very safe. Anakin has some work to do this turn to stay safe, but assuming Anakin can get safe this turn, you've got a real chance to then get behind Ed's list and get Warthog off the table. But yeah, definitely it's uphill from here.
Yeah, and should you take Warthog off without losing anything else, the ETAs versus the Y-Wings is a matchup I don't know that I love, but it's certainly winnable. You're going to have to be very careful because, as you described, a single Proton Torp may ruin one of these ETA's days. But certainly, you have the tools to win. It might just be a very cautious game from that point forward. So, got into an open engagement there. I think that's a fairly unpredictable result. So, Ed, where do you go from here? Does your target priority now change? Having taken those 2 V19s off the board, are you still wanting rid of the third one, or is this a point to try and pressure the ETAs a bit more?
When I was in this position, I wasn't feeling that I could really pressure the ETAs at all because Obi was going to, I assume, zoom off behind me, and I couldn't really get round on Anakin as I would have liked. So I was more about just keeping my options open at this stage. I wasn't going to commit onto anything really. Just try and keep some arcs facing in the right direction, and try and keep some shots on really. Because I knew keeping those ETAs pinned down was going to be difficult, so I wanted to keep my arcs kind of as wide as possible to try and get some shots in. And so turning it on them now was going to kind of restrict me there
Yeah, they're really slippery, aren't they? And I think again, I'd be tempted to bring yellow and green down towards the bottom of the edge of the board to try and catch Annie if he goes straight, but it's entirely possible that Annie barrels left here and then hard turns or banks, and as you say, you've then put those 2 Y-Wings out of position for the rest of the game potentially. George, obviously must be a bit shell shocked to lose those V19s at this stage. I suppose same question to you really, like game plan wise, we can see you coming in here, looks like sort of coming in for blocks, is that right?
Yeah, so I was kind of grateful that I had the bid so that my I2 could move first. Because even having lost the 2 torrents, I was like, oh, that's not great. But the last one was in a decent position to just get in the way of the block, in theory. It's gone horribly, but it was at least to get in the way. And if I can take Warthog off and, keep the aces safe, then there's still a lot of time left to play a cagey game and kind of bring things back. Because I think, I'm trying to remember, so points-wise, I've given up 50 points for gaining about 30 in return, because I think Warthog's, 60-odd?
Yeah, and I like both your moves here, right? I think coming in for that block was really sensible. I particularly like Annie with the kind of pre-position block, which you've seen has just caught Warthog here, which is, I think, really important. It's going to give Obi the ability to arc dodge if he needs to. Certainly without the focus taken on Warthog, you need to be less worried about him. But those K-turns, Ed, were really nice. And did you kind of see the block coming?
Yeah, I kind of saw the block coming, and I knew the ETAs would be on that side of the board, so I kind of thought, yeah, let's flip over and see what we can catch. Yeah, I wasn't expecting the Annie pre-position. That caught me out, to be honest, and that's why obviously Warthog ended up bumping.
Yeah, Obi-Wan had I was like, oh god, I need to kill Warthog, so it's risky, but I'll take the lock, because I forgot about two things this round. I forgot about, well, R4 Astromechs, so I saw the Y-Wings K-turn, and I was like, oh, that's great, because their only blue maneuvers the following turn are the 1 and 2 forwards, but they've got R4, which I've forgotten about. I've also forgotten about the dorsal turret, which is a bit crucial, so...
Yeah, the dorsal turret's nice. So if you want to be passing those locks around, you don't really care you're getting damage, but you can pass the lock over to one with a Torp if you need to. So yeah, they're handy.
Yeah, nice.
I think Anakin's checking here to dump the stress.
Yeah, so we see that K-turn from Anakin, and as you say, using his pilot ability to get rid of the stress, which is important given where he is. He's in too many arcs at the moment, you'd think. Certainly he's going to want at least to take that evade. Bit of a tricky spot here, George. And I think this is a situation that players often find themselves in. So you've got a ship, you've got options to kind of take the defensive token. But if you do, all you're really doing is kind of almost signing the death warrant of your V19, which is going to get shot instead. Given that the V19 is so much cheaper, I suppose that's quite an easy choice, is it?
Yeah, I mean, really, Obi-Wan sums it up. They're doing their job, so the Jedi can do theirs.
Very nice.
To be taken from the sacred texts of Episode 3.
And did you decline to shoot again with Anakin on this turn?
Yeah, I kind of had to, because if I shoot again, then Warthog takes a lock. He passes it to the Y-Wings. They Torp Anakin. And Obi-Wan, luckily, was out of range and out of arc, so he could take the shot.
And continuing the theme,
puts in 3 crits.
Yeah, 3 crits.
Didn't have to spend an R7A7 charge. Didn't have to spend marksmanship.
Absolutely, that's incredible. And another direct hit in there as the final one, and I believe that is now a dead Warthog. Initiative killed, but obviously, being Warthog, he's going to stick around to fire at least. But that's an incredible amount of crits rolled. I doubt that you got such good dice for the rest of the day, either of you.
No.
Yeah. Not quite.
Wasting all of the crits in this opening engagement, knocking lumps out of each other. So we get the Warthog shot here. Choice of targets, range 2 into Obi-Wan, who looks like he might be tokenless. I don't know if there's an evade tucked in there.
Yeah, he just has 2 force.
Or an evaded Anakin who's in more firing arcs. I think I'd probably shoot Anakin if it was me.
I think I wanted to get the lock across because Warthog's got the lock on Obi. So from memory, I think I shoot Obi to get that lock to one of the other Y-Wings.
Yeah, because Obi is tokenless, and what I've forgotten about is that he's in arc of the dorsal turret as well.
Nice. And again, more clear thinking, more benefiting from knowing how your list works. And not only do you get the opportunity to pass that lock across, but you sneak a hit through, and not a crit. Sorry, I was just expecting it to be, given everything that's happened so far. But just a hit on this occasion. But that is a third of that ETA's health gone, and that does happen, doesn't it, with the ETAs, George?
Yeah, this day was very much a case of becoming zen with the dice and just expecting the blankouts at every opportunity. Because it's kind of how you have to fly the ETAs, because it'll happen. You've got 6 games, the chances are at least one of them you'll blank out and lose an ETA.
Yeah, Lloyd and I, I'm sure many of our viewers have been trying on multiple occasions to get the ETAs to work, and yeah, you're absolutely right. I think not spending too many points on them, accepting that every now and then they'll just go pop, is probably a way to do well with them and also to stay sane. This V19 unmodded gets 2 hits and puts 2 damage through onto this green Y-wing. That's a sort of nice free damage there from a ship that's had to do something, given that its attempts at blocking had failed. And then we are down to the Y-wings, and this is probably the most important shot. Dorsal turret, range 2, only 2 dice, but does have that lock, I think.
They're walking to red.
Wonderful. Okay, so sort of planning for the future. If he does happen to be in range, you might get the proton torp off. I like it. And so, yeah, 1 hit into 1 evade.
Warthog didn't re-roll there. There's no re-roll on the green one because it doesn't work on turret attacks.
Nice. I was wondering about that. I'm glad that somebody knows what's going on. That's really good. And as it was, one hit without the reroll gets the evade, and Obi-Wan staying above half. That feels like it might be important coming into the next few turns. And we get the 2 remaining Y-Wings. I think little thought about shooting Anakin there, but sensibly goes for the range 1.
And so again, here we're seeing the importance from George of not shooting with Anakin, because would 100% have been taking a Torp from Red if he had.
Yeah, he definitely would have taken the Torp then if he'd shot at Anakin,
Yeah, Anakin's done some flashy flying and declined to shoot twice now.
Do you feel like he's going to have to do something at some stage, but both times it's been a sensible decision not to? And this turn, the V19 decides that it will not go quietly into the night. Rolls only single hits coming in from both Y-Wings, single evade on the first roll, and had the evade taken on the second, and no further damage done. So a much better turn for you, George, but that damage onto Obi-Wan is a concern.
Yeah, I mean, it's nerve-wracking, but I think my mindset at this stage was still like, okay, could be worse, because ultimately I was just like, if I get torped, I die. So it was that kind of just, what's 1 damage, because I'm in a position where I'm not being torped and I'll probably live, or I'm in the torp position and I just die. So I'm kind of treating them as 1 health, basically.
Yeah, and Ed, we're starting to see your list getting slightly out of position. We've got a couple of stressed Y-Wings. We've got a green Y-Wing that's going to go the gas cloud, whatever it does this turn, barring the self-bump, but that just defers the problem to next turn.
Yes, I wanted to say, at this point I was looking at that lock on Obi, thinking, where's he going to go? How am I going to get a chance to get that Torp off from Red? So that was kind of my main thoughts at this point, is how am I going to do that? And then the other 2, the other one, I think I was just going to try and use him as maybe a blocker to help out, get that Torp off. And the green one, I was thinking he needs to get back into the fights.
So this is an interesting point, I think. We've just seen Anakin's pre-position boost, but I think that's a really interesting problem, George. So we've got Ed, he's got the lock on you. He's got ships that are all moving the same initiative and kind of can get out of the way of each other if required. And he's got an R4 astromech that you may or may not remember about.
I had forgotten about it this turn.
How do you get Obi-Wan safe from here? What are your options?
Basically, I can barrel roll left and try and tuck myself into this bottom right corner. There are lots of ways to go, so I can try and hide behind that gas cloud, because I can barrel roll hard 1 and then boost to try and line up a gas cloud if I'm at risk there. Could go fast, like boost 3 bank. There's a kind of way of thinking where you can often end up trapping yourself, where you go, oh yeah, I'll reposition, do the 3 bank, and then I'll just boost out. But you're forgetting the fact that you can't, you often end up tricking yourself into trying to take the same action twice. And so you always have to be like, wait, what did I do as the pre-position? I can't do that afterwards, because it's either in the kind of heat of the moment, it's always a little bit easy to forget.
Yeah. So from my point of view here, heading right seems dangerous. Very easy for Ed to come just straight with that Y-wing. The V19 may or may not be out of the way. If it is, you can take a focus token and threaten a lot of that kind of right-hand board edge. So I think I probably discount that. I quite like your idea about barrel rolling and one harding and ending up in this bottom right-hand corner and, with the boost or indeed just kind of take your evade, have the gas cloud. And then I suppose the other options you talked about, when you were saying going fast, are you thinking about going fast and then coming through this gap towards the bottom of the edge of the board?
Yeah, so basically kind of where you're kind of going between the asteroid, the bottom right asteroid and the one that green is on, either a boost into a 3 bank or a 3 bank, because obviously the other trick is you don't know which reposition you're going to need sometimes. And so if you take it as the pre-position, it can then restrict your options and sometimes just give away what you're doing. So sometimes it's just safer to do nothing.
And is there an argument for trying to get kind of up close and personal and, get into range 1, gives you the ability to arc dodge maybe a little bit easier, and obviously the Torps can't be fired at range 1, or is even the primary too risky with that target lock sitting on you?
I think at this stage I'm just well, if dice are rolled at me, they can hit me, so there's the danger. And I was basically hoping that I bring Anakin in, the torrent stays where it is, and I just create roadblocks for these Y-wings that kind of give Obi-Wan enough time to get somewhere a little bit more secure to then re-engage from, rather than
yeah, and we see that with that Anakin boost that we've already seen. It looks like a nice blocking position, and also looks like a very nice position to K-turn from. Same trick as last turn.
Yeah, I think later on, George, I'll probably ask you a bit more about your system phase blocking with the ETAs. But Ed, how aware were you of that system phase blocking, and was this something you were accounting for with your dials, or did it catch you out a bit?
I think it probably caught me out a couple of times. I haven't played too many ETAs since they've been released, and yeah, it definitely caught me out a couple of times. I think this turn, probably caught me out a little bit.
Okay, and that sounds like a good time to hit play again and see what happens. Will Obi-Wan take this Torp or not? That V19, yeah, I don't think it had anywhere it's useful to go. I like the self bump. Keeps it in the way of most of the Y-wings and has a decent chance of getting a shot to green if he too hards, which he does, as I say it. Loses the stress that he took last turn because it was a blue maneuver, but it's going to have to roll for strain from the gas cloud. Not the worst thing in the world on a one agility ship, but obviously, if you're able to roll evade dice, it's nice to be able to. Didn't see that dice roll, don't know why. Having not done it for green, looks like we're going to get it for yellow here. So yellow does roll and take a strain. I think maybe just a forgotten trigger there, and it does happen. Certainly the first game of the day when people are, not quite awake, and not quite getting the bump on red. So red's in a nice position to take the focus, and Obi-Wan is going to have to do something because a fully modded Proton Torp is not something that he wants to be dealing with.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Ed, your list, when you first look at it, looks very simple, right? It's a bunch of Y-wings that roll around with Proton Torps and just kind of cast this net. But there's actually a lot more to the list, and there's a lot more tricks and traps to it. And I would imagine your weekend was a lot of catching people out with things where your list can do things that they hadn't really stopped to think about.
Yeah, especially with the dorsal turrets passing those locks around. Yeah, that catches people out a few times. And it didn't catch George out, but the wolf pack as well caught out a few people.
Yeah, I think for me the weekend was defined by the number of declined shots that you have with Wolfpack and with Zam crew and things. The number of declined shots that I saw was and declined myself was, I think, probably more than I've seen in most of my X-Wing tournaments combined.
Absolutely, but Annie is finally getting to shoot here. 2 hits, 1 evade from the Y-wing. It's going to lose its final shield here. Now facing that range 1 shot that Obi-Wan rolled into. 4 dice. Nice hit focus to open up. Has a focus for defense. So goes ahead and spends the force. And then converts with both marksmanship and R7A7 for hit, crit. Looking a bit scary for the Y-wing. Ooh, going to take it all. So all of a sudden down to 2 health. Taking a wounded pilot. And a further crit coming in from the V19. Not to be outdone. Y-wing looking for an evade here. Does not get it. There's a further damage. And a further wounded pilot. So he's really hurting in there. 1 health left, but has survived through the turn, and that might be pivotal. Going to live to shoot back. Having done some damage, the V19 is going to have to face a bit of incoming fire here. Looks like red is the only thing firing. 3 dice at range 1. More crits. Hit crit, but rolls the evade, takes the crit, which is a console fire. And we're down to the final shot of the turn, which is this green Y-wing into Obi-Wan.
The damage output there had me feeling a bit better. I've killed 84, I guess, the big point sink that is Warthog.
Ooh, 3 hits there, 1 just off the board, but 3 evades. That feels important. That could have been a huge swing. But Obi living to fight another day, staying above half, And that feels like it might be enormously important going forwards.
Yeah, I was fully expecting the sword to fall at that point, so I was like, oh.
I think that would have been very difficult to come back from. But as it is, you've got the Y-Wings still in awkward positions, difficult for them to get their arcs on, getting increasingly difficult for them to get proton torps on pointed at the ETAs. And you've now got at least one of the Y-Wings, which is eminently initiative killable. Lloyd, how do you see the kind of positioning at this point? I think Ed has been making good choices, but because of the limitations of the Y-Wings, for me, although they're good, they're kind of slowly just getting him further and further out of position.
Yeah, I think I have to say that George has made incredible use of the system phase, moving mostly from Anakin, and then Anakin's ability to K-turn twice and get actions both times is getting a lot of use out of that ship. And it's doing it from safe positions almost every time. So yeah, I think it's incredible value that George is getting out of the ETAs here. For Ed, it feels like the thing that's concerning me is, as you said, they are starting to get picked apart, but I feel like I would like to see more target locks from the Y-Wings, and part of that I think was again Anakin blocking and the torrent getting and blocking and denying them actions. But I think if the Y-Wings had two locks on Obi and one lock on Anakin, that they then have the option to pass around as well if need be, that makes it a much different game for George. It cuts down significantly the parts of the board that he can afford to be in at all, and makes everything a bit scarier. So I think that's the one thing I would like to see here is the Y-Wings almost taking a turn off, getting locks.
Yeah.
Like if they all just disengage and take locks, even if they get chased this turn, they can K-turn next turn and throw those arcs really wide again and really scare the ETAs off again.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, that kind of turn where I K-turned them, and I was thinking, now watching it back, I probably should have just 4-forwarded or 3-forwarded and taken the target locks and then K-turn the next turn.
And yeah, I think that plan probably works against most people, right? It's only that George is aware enough of what your list can do and how it works, and is making sensible and smart decisions so that you don't get those mods.
Yeah, I think so. Him declining to take those shots, I was like, okay, yeah, that's costing me, and getting Warthog a little bit out of position to not get the thread tracers off, or to not be getting the most of his rerolls was
Yeah, so even coming into the initial engagement, I was looking at it, I was like, if Warthog has a barrel roll action, which obviously he doesn't, then it's perfect, right? Because he can just roll left and it swings him out a little bit wider and he can roll back into the engage a bit more easily. As it was, he just slightly overshot. And as we so often say, it's those tiny margins, right? He's half a base length further forward from where you want him, and that changes everything coming into that engage.
Yeah, and that pre-position of Anakin to get the block, when I was hoping to go a lot further forward to get the utility out the back, but yeah, he blocked me, so it didn't happen. So yeah, that was good work there.
I know it's right. It's all about familiarity. George, I know, has played quite a bit of the sort of Republic crew carriers, so I've seen a lot of arcs, I've seen a lot of lats from him. So presumably has run Wolfpack as well. I would say, George, you must have at some point.
I don't know if I have actually. I've run a lot of like Hawk with nothing, and the odd Hawk with Plo, but I've rarely because I tend to prefer the higher initiative stuff in Republic. I'm always just trying to squeeze in named pilots, and often it doesn't leave room for much beyond the kind of crucial titles on the Jedi.
No, absolutely, yeah. But no, I think it's maybe not then experience of it on the table, but that just awareness of what everything can do. Whereas I think, Ed, from your side, the perhaps limited times you've had the chance to play against ETAs shows, right? It's having to be aware of that blocking from a higher initiative ship than you that isn't where it can be later on.
Yeah, I think especially during lockdown, I haven't played a huge amount. So yeah, whereas before I was playing a couple of games a week up at the gaming den in Basingstoke, I'm literally getting maybe, I've done a few leagues, but probably less than half the amounts I would normally do. So just that familiarity of the enemy ships, I haven't just managed to pick it up or get game time with them myself. So it's one of my problems. I've got young family, and getting out is always a struggle.
Yeah, I feel you on that, and I think maybe what we're starting to see here in this game is that practice makes perfect, and there really is no replacement for that experience of the new ships in the meta. Another subtext as we start to see moves coming in here is that although George, probably the 4 players on the stream today, has had the least prestigious tournament results, Lloyd and I, much as we don't like to admit it, think that he is an incredibly good player and consistently doing well with lists that are off meta and suboptimal. And George, we will talk to you in a bit about how you do that. And I think an example here, the reason I bring that up is that the ace play here with very lightweight aces has been exemplary. We've seen Anakin get in safe positions, make the choice not to shoot so that they remain safe positions. And I think a lot of players would worry about that. A lot of players would see their I6 ace not shooting and think, "Oh, I'm losing. I'm not getting the most out of him. I've got to be more aggressive." But actually, you've remained calm, you've remained patient, and now Anakin's in a beautiful position, and now he's going to start to do some work. And I think that is a real good example, and the opening of this game is a real good example for anyone who, maybe has tried Suntir Fell and not understood what the fuss is about, and decided that they can't play Suntir or they can't play Fen or any of these aces. I think you just in a large part need to be very aware of their strengths and weaknesses, and a beautiful example here from George. And I'll try and make that the last nice thing I say about him this episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, amidst all of this perhaps unfounded praise, I could like my torrent has kind of on the assumption that the Y-Wings will get a K-turn just completely parked himself in the wrong place. I think yet again forgetting about the R4 Astromech.
I wish I'd meant to show you up like that, but no, you've done it all yourself. A reasonable move to play for. I think that blocking the K-turns would have been amazing, but as it is, the K-turn that is blocked, that red, just bumps back into yellow, and you're sat there taking 2 range 1 shots potentially. Obi-Wan's had to disengage a bit, and the hard turn there from Anakin. Talk us through that.
I basically was, because I was kind of playing for the K-turns, I was thinking that basically yellow was going to be pointing straight at where Anakin is. And so I was thinking, if I hard turn, then I've got the boost to try and like get behind the gas cloud pretty much.
And the evade rather than the roll away for me looks like it's probably out of dorsal turret range.
Oh yeah, I barrel rolled from the system face was why I didn't.
Wonderful. So you know the rules of the game, and I don't. That is a sensible reason.
There is something I was going to say actually about this with ETAs and the various moves we have now in the system phase, and combined with discipline. I think we're getting pretty close to the stage where we need a way of tracking the reposition actions that ships have taken already in the game. Like I feel like a barrel roll and a boost token are probably getting pretty close to the point where they are going to be beneficial.
Is this where we finally get some sponsorship and get Cog02 to make us some boost and barrel tokens?
Like a boost charge and a barrel roll charge that you like flip when you do it. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad idea. I would find that useful.
Yeah, definitely for the ETAs, that sounds like a useful thing. Maybe we cut that out, Lloyd, and we can make our millions. Yeah, I think, again, the hard turn away on first glance looks like a bad move, but it's another example of what I've just been talking about, which is that having got yourself back into a good position in the game after taking such a lot of damage in that opening engagement, it would be a shame to be too aggressive with Anakin, to get him caught and to put yourself behind again. So we've seen a bit of trade of poorly modified fire here. Obi-Wan unable to do any further damage to the Y-Wings, and the Y-Wings themselves doing a little bit better, and that V19 pays for a block that didn't turn out as well as it might have done. And we are down to 1 on fire Y-Wing and 2 completely healthy Y-Wing versus some very agile but very lightweight Jedi. Points-wise, where are we at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm narrowly ahead by 9 points. So I've lost the 75 points of torrents. The convenient thing is there's 3 of them, but they're only 75 points total. Traded for Warthog and half a Y-Wing.
And that gives you some options. So we're certainly deep into the latter half of the game here. The Y-Wings are not the most maneuverable ships, but your lead is very narrow and is in fact a one hull lead. If Obi takes another damage, then you're back behind. Can you disengage? I suppose that's a 2-part question. Is it a viable strategy, and then is it kind of in your play style to do so?
Yeah, I mean the thing what is worrying me is that I'm very low on force. yeah, Anakin kind of needs to run away behind this wall of debris clouds, which is a very useful thing for the ETAs, just because they love to basically sit behind a rock and make you pick. I mean, they can't react to it, but they're very good at sitting behind it and then barreling out from behind it after you've locked in your move and you can't do anything to react. So Anakin, yeah, disengage. Obi's got a little bit of breathing room, not much, but he can sort of go as slow as possible just to try and delay getting in there, just to regen some force. The problem is ETAs can't really go slow, which is also kind of why I did the one hard the previous turn, was because the slowest move I could do that wasn't a hard turn was a 2-bank, and that would have just jammed me straight into the back of the scrum.
Yeah, I've not put the ETAs on the table much in at all, but I do really miss the 1-bank when I use them.
Yeah, I find myself you find yourself trying to stall a lot, using barrel roll out to 1 hard in, or boosting away to hard turn in. Basically, you're trying to go as slow as possible, because the moment you're too close, then you end up bumping, and that's a death sentence.
And we see that here with Obi coming in exactly as you described, taking the barrel roll, which is lined up his bullseye arc, has him facing that gas cloud, but with the ability to take the pre-move barrel roll next turn in the system phase, and not have to go over that gas cloud necessarily next turn. Ed, you are behind narrowly, but you need points from somewhere. And at the moment, the Y-wings are kind of still all facing in different directions. How do you sort this problem out?
So I was happy that I'd got the locks, started to get some locks now. Although Lloyd was talking about earlier, not having those locks meant he wasn't so scared of me. But so now I've got those locks. It's all about trying to keep arcs wide and overlapping to try and catch them if they do try and arc dodge. So yeah, I'm sort of setting up for the next turn, probably with the K turn with red, and just slow rolling with the yellow one and the green one to see if I can try and catch Obi. So at this point, I was like, there's no point chasing after Annie. He's gone over there. I'm not going to get him. So let's see if we can try and get something into Obi over the next couple of turns.
Absolutely, and we can see that on this next turn. So he had a long range shot there from Obi, sensibly deciding to try and put more damage into green rather than shooting through the gas cloud. But green able to evade it.
Well, I mean, so with the gas cloud here, actually, I'm in quite a good position just because the auto blaster doesn't care about the gas cloud. So any crits I do are going through, which is the handy thing. But yeah, it's just trying to finish green.
George, the disengage in Anakin, I think, was sensible. You obviously don't want him in between these 2 gas clouds that Obi is facing towards, taking fire on this turn. But having disengaged so hard with Anakin, I wonder whether you'd have been better off disengaging a bit more with Obi as well. I kind of worry that he's isolated now. Is that incorrect? You know, am I wrong in that? Is he got lots of options to get out of here, or?
No, not really. I mean, Obi is in a tricky place. I think at this point in the game, I was very close to a caffeine/proton torp stress induced heart attack. Do not know what my heart rate was at this point. But yeah, Obi is like, oh god. I was really hoping I'd nip in, I'd put the last damage onto that green Y-wing, and then Obi uses that point to disengage because I'm sort of clearer ahead in points. Hasn't worked, and now I'm a bit panicked.
So, Ed, is it just sort of turn all the arcs in the vague direction of Obi, or is there a more kind of complex plan that you're plotting?
At this stage, that was it. Yeah, because I knew Annie was going to take a couple of turns to get back in. Yellow was in quite a nice position to come in slowly, and red probably a K turn. Green I was a little bit worried about because I knew he probably was going to try and pounce and kill him. But yeah, it's just all about just trying to get those arcs on.
Yeah, you read my mind. Just as I was sort of saying that I'd be too hard in green in, he is in a position where Obi has a high chance of being able to initiative kill him. So I suppose your other option is that kind of 4 forward or 3 bank, try and keep range and get behind this top right hand gas cloud.
Yeah, I can't remember what I did, to be honest. I might have done that. We'll see. It's a surprise to both of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of looking over here being like, what on earth did I do?
Lloyd, maybe you can talk a bit about that. Again, it's a position you get yourself in, isn't it? If I turn this ship in, it might get initiative killed. But then if I run it away, it's not contributing. And the shots that would have gone into it will go into something else. So there is some value in in just absorbing that final shot? I don't know what the best answer is.
I suppose the best case is if you can block with it, right? But from where it is, it's incredibly unlikely it's going to get a block on Obi unless Obi's doing something a bit crazy, which, I mean, is not impossible. From this system barrel roll, if green is two-turning quite like a barrel roll across to try and catch Obi if he goes fast, that's an option, but I think it's unlikely that's what George is doing. I think you have to try and get some value out of it. If the ship just completely disengages, it needs to be fast enough and or defensive enough to be able to get away with that. And a Y-wing being chased by an ETA is a losing proposition. So I think at that stage you have to try and get some value out of it. And if the result is you lose green but you get a Proton Torp or even half points into Obi, that's probably an acceptable trade. What you don't want to do is peel it off, try and hide in a corner with it, and have Anakin come around in 2 turns and just initiative kill it for nothing.
I think we have got the 2 wounded pilots cancelling each other out there. We haven't seen the roll for the stress, but the Y-wing has been doing blue moves anyway, so I don't think it's affected the game at all. I really like the K-turn. I think if it was me, I'd have been hard turning red and maybe rotating the arc. But actually, the K-turn's just much better. It gets the arc in the direction you need it pointed in now, and you've got those green moves next turn to kind of come in and keep pressuring. That's a much better move. As it is, I'd be getting into range 1, taking what I think was initially a 3-dice shot.
It was the auto blaster into green, just finish it off. I was graced by some fortunate dice this turn. Basically, I misjudged my hope was that I'd be like, I was thinking the K-turn would come. I was thinking if I bank, I might just be able to sneak out of range of red.
So yeah, there's nothing I could do. Got lucky with the evade, but it didn't happen. Then I was quite happy to nick Obi here at range 3.
Yeah, this feels like it could be big, but again, I think George, knowing his list and how it works, has ended up with a token stacked Obi.
Yeah.
So he's taking a mod, he's taking a Torp, but it's only single modded, and he has all of the defensive options available to him that he can get, essentially.
Yeah, and I think the decision to roll the Torp is correct, but it hasn't gone well so far. We've got the target lock spend, getting rid of those blanks. I think very sensible. That's not how maths works, but it feels good. But only ending up with 2 hits, hit crit from the modification, and that is not going to be enough. And indeed, Obi, who cares about mods? So that's why you take mods, guys, so you don't have to use them. That is 3 evades, and I think that's average, right? Average dice is that you don't take any damage there. Nice to have got away with it without spending any modifications, and that's perhaps where the luck came in, that you now are unlikely to take any damage from this shot as well, whereas maybe you'd have been expecting 1 over the 2 shots. Ed sensibly deciding not to spend the lock there with focus evade. You're just not going to get damage through unless you get the blank out. And we're on to the next turn.
Yeah, I was basically fortunate, and that kind of fortune cascaded basically with the token stack, saving me from the next shot.
Yeah, and again, contradicting myself. Ed, as I said, I think initially I agree with not spending the lock because you're not likely to get damage through. And I think, as it was with the evade dice, you wouldn't have done. But I suppose the counterpoint is that with yellow stressed, you're not likely to get a decent shot on Obi-Wan again soon. And so maybe that's a point where you have to swing for the hills.
True, but I think it's always, he might, my back of my head, I was like, we might be able to get yellow passing that lock to red, so red's got maybe a reasonable chance of getting a Torp off. So yeah, it's always about trying to maintain them, really. And because you had so many tokens, I was like, it's unlikely to get through.
I suppose you had the option here to pass it right now, right? So yellow could have passed to red at this point.
You're right. I probably should have passed it.
Yeah, I've got to assume Obi isn't going to be there in the end of the system phase next turn, which means that yellow can then safely 2 turn to the right and potentially get a lock on Anakin.
Yeah, you're probably right. I missed. That was the trigger I missed. I should have passed that lock to red.
Well, you've been doing really well with the triggers so far, so I think we'll let you away with 1. But yeah, that would have been really nice, wouldn't it, to free up yellow to take that lock, and that could have caused Obi some problems.
I know, as we say, right? It's very easy sitting here watching it with no 5 games to follow this in a full flow of a tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. Having watched Ed for an hour, using the ability well, I'd still forgotten it when I was suggesting you should have spent it. You have at least learned over the last hour, Lloyd, so I think you're doing better out of the two of us. We get the barrel here from Obi-Wan coming towards. I think is sensible. Leaves yellow either bumping or turning over the top. Either way, not likely to get shots on Obi-Wan. Red rolling up, can take a lock of his own and does so. Maybe able to get the double modded here, but Obi-Wan looks like he's got a nice route either to run into the top corner of the board, or indeed if he 3-hards to come down into this bottom corner and arc dodge everything.
That's where I messed up.
So is that K-turn from an already stressed Y-wing?
Yeah, so
I have been there. That is fairly crippling. I think at this stage you need those shots on, and this guy drifting forwards is not what you wanted.
And so, as we have the Y-wing here doing the 2 forward for executing a red maneuver, the eagle-eyed viewers among us will have noticed that last turn the Y-wing actually did 2 forward and cleared stress, but it looks like Ed had forgotten to take the stress token off, and so the assumption from both players was that the Y-wing was stressed when in fact it shouldn't have been.
Yeah, so I haven't played a huge amount of games on TTS, and that's the kind of issue I would never have made on the real table. I think having that physical token there, always remember to clear it when you do the blue maneuver. So it's something about TTS etiquette. I'm still a little bit rough. You would have seen earlier, I deleted my dial by mistake, and I'm constantly doing things I shouldn't be on TTS, which is it's just something I've just not got familiar enough with it. I'm looking forward to playing back in person to stop those sort of silly mistakes.
Absolutely, aren't we all? And I think the one thing that all of these TTS games has given us, in addition obviously to a way to play X-Wing this year, has been the opportunity to go back and review games. It's so much easier to get a recording and a copy of your game to go back and assess and see what you're doing well, what you can improve on, where you can learn lessons. As we all do, right? Paul and I've said a number of times across all of these videos, we have learned things in every single video we've done. And I saw, watching my own games back from this weekend, saw triggers that I'd missed, and I would say generally I'm pretty good with triggers, but I found things that I missed that 4 people commentating didn't see as well. So it's incredibly easy to miss things in the game, and I suspect every single one of us does, but we don't usually have the opportunity to go back and learn from it. Absolutely.
Meanwhile,
So it kind of works out because it gets half on Obi.
yeah, absolutely. This Y-wing that should have been able to K-turn, should have had its arcs pointing entirely the wrong direction, has just spent its lock to chip a damage through and get half points on Obi-Wan. So I believe that puts you ahead, Ed. Is that correct?
Close. With Green Y-wing having been killed, it's still George Head. It's 107 to 103.
Okay, so not as pivotal maybe as I initially thought, but nevertheless, a Y-wing that should have been K-turning wasn't and has done some damage. Game state is both players' responsibility, but both of you missed the fact that Y-wing should have had its stress removed, and both planned the moves this turn on the basis that it didn't. So I think, as Lloyd said, it's one of those things. And really, I want to reiterate that point. It is easy, and people do it all the time, to sit on the Twitch chat criticizing the players. I've seen people accuse people of cheating. The reality is, whether we like to admit it or not, we all make these mistakes all the time, and it's only when they're on stream and when they're recorded that we pick up on the vast majority of them. Certainly, I've had a number of games myself where after the fact I realised that I made a mistake at a crucial moment, which has either cost me the game or given me a massive advantage that I shouldn't have had. Some nice tight positioning there from Ed, getting these Y-wings turned round. At this point, the path to victory is clear. Obi-Wan must die, and he's heading towards a corner for the first time in the game. Looks like you are going to get an opportunity to try and achieve that.
Yeah, I was looking at points here because I was like, I want Obi to that damage. I was like, he's going into a corner. I'm probably going to lose him. How's that shaken out? And I was like, well, Obi-Wan dies, and that gives Ed 130. I would then have to kill a Y-wing to come back ahead, and I was like, oh god, that's a big task.
That's a lot for Anakin to choose through, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, but shows the importance of the points, because knowing that you play differently, right? I think it would be very easy to assume, I'll just shoot another Y-wing, I'll get half points on a Y-wing, and maybe I'm still okay. But knowing that is not going to help you win the game, I think I think you can focus all your energy on trying to keep Obi-Wan safe. This turn looks like he should probably be okay. Just a range 3 primary. Has the lock though, so this is a Proton Torp opportunity. We'll see if you're about to take it, Ed.
Well, so I think it's also one of those things where TTS X-Wing, because everyone has access to Yasby, it's that odd thing of you can keep track of points in a way that you're not allowed to on the tabletop, which I find like is odd.
Yeah.
Like because I really think that live scores should be a default part of the rules, so that everyone is both sharing in that information and making decisions.
Yeah, it feels weird, doesn't it, to get to the end of the game and realize your opponent, is incorrect about the score. It feels like a weird thing to gain an advantage from. And Ed, so whilst all that was going on, we saw you take the primary shot through the gas cloud. Decided not to take the Torp there. Talk us through that, and presumably just saving it for this next turn.
Yeah, I didn't want to. It wasn't a great shot through the gas cloud. He had an evade, so he's going to get probably 2 evades minimum, maybe probably all 4 to be honest. And so I thought I'll save the lock for the next turn and the Torp.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's you only need that 1 damage to go through, but George is sat there at that point with a force, with an evade, with a evade conversion and an extra dice from the gas cloud. I think it's probably sensible to try and get a better shot this turn, and we'll see whether you manage it. George, trapped in the corner. I can't really see anything too clever to do.
Yeah, so red isn't too much of a threat because it's just the dorsal. So I barrel roll here, and I have a feeling this kind of gave this shows my hand, because I was looking at this. Obi-Wan barrel rolls, the Y-wing moves up, and Ed does a really nice barrel roll, having seen my barrel roll. Because I basically tried to stall behind the gas cloud to try and keep it between me and the Y-wing so that I can get that 4 dice.
Yes, we see that pre-position barrel coming in there, and we've been singing the praises of it all game. But that is a definite downside. Is it tells Ed what you're going to do, and your choices were to try and run as fast as you can around the corner, or to stay there. And by barrel rolling further into the corner, you're obviously not going very far. And we can see Ed react to that with what I think is a really nice barrel roll. Certainly gives him a much greater chance of not having obstruction on this shot, which is going to make a huge difference. And you're in a little bit of a tricky spot here, George. Only 1 action.
And I basically have to take the chance of the gas cloud. I can either evade, but if he gets 4 hits, I'm dead. Or I can boost and hope for 4 dice and the gas cloud. But not great odds either way.
It looks like you have got that obstruction and probably are still range 3 of the dorsal turret, so that's not going to fire at you either. Anakin here, the plus side is that he has not a care in the world and can just roll in and try and do some damage. It might be relevant later in the game. And I think that's, good judgment, because that is close to not being obstructed, but is definitely the right choice, because you get not only a likely evade but also an extra dice versus just the 1 evade had you taken the evade token. So we see Anakin here, range 1, just out of bullseye, rolls 2 hits. The Y-wing getting an evade. I haven't seen many of those this game, but does take some damage. Obi-Wan here, the least important dice Obi-Wan is going to roll this turn. Taking the 2 dice at range 3 into red. Again, electing to not take pointless shots through gas clouds. Red also taking a damage. And then this feels like it might be the game right here. So we've got 4 single modded dice into 4 sort of double modded dice. Oh, and a good start. The crit is not relevant, but the 4 hits certainly are. And that is...
I mean, much deserved after the whiff on the previous Torp.
Just enough. And Obi-Wan goes down.
I'm quite pleased to see those 4 hits out of hand. Bit of luck then. But
I mean, well deserved at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I did for a moment there think that the free evade was going to get you it, but only with 1 health left, that is a dead Obi-Wan. Really, Anakin cannot take any damage here at all. Shouldn't do through the gas cloud, but does have to spend a force. And George, you are now behind. We have got about 5 minutes left in the game. And
yeah, I need to kill a Y-wing somehow.
this has really turned. I kind of thought Obi-Wan was going to get away with that. I thought the positioning was okay. Single modded Torp, but you never really expect those 4 hits. Ed, you must be feeling pretty good at this stage.
Yeah, I was quite happy at this stage. I was like, okay, so I knew I was up, and trying to decide what to do, because I know Anakin was going to get 3-ish shots at me. I wanted to get multiple guns on him, so yeah, trying to decide how to evade him as best as possible.
And what are your options there? I mean, from George's point of view, he needs to. Well, I suppose 2 halved Y-wings is enough. So I was going to say he needs to focus fire, but he doesn't really. And given the limited maneuverability, it's kind of hard to stop him getting those range 1 shots. I'd much rather be you than George at this stage, I think, but it's still not impossible. Lloyd, is there a clever way to go? I think I'd have been tempted to sort of do the 2 hards and then barrel towards Anakin and hope that he bumped or had gone too quickly.
I think I completely agree. I think once Anakin doesn't move in the system phase, that is telling in itself, right? If Anakin had boosted right, I would be looking at something like a K-turn or something along those lines. As soon as he doesn't, I really like the idea of 2-turning all and barrel rolling them in. If Anakin had boosted to the right and you're worried about the K-turn, you barrel roll red to the right to try and cover it and threaten Anakin. So, as George said in the last turn as well, the barrel roll from Obi in the system phase gives information. But in the same way, the not barrel rolling also gives information.
Yeah, because equally, if I'd sat where I was, I think Ed would just barrel the other way to catch me, just the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was the first half we needed.
Absolutely, this game's easy in hindsight. That red barrel roll would have left Annie having to arc dodge, but as it is, able to barrel roll in, get that range 1 on. George making a sensible decision there, needs to just go aggressive at this point, obviously needs the hits, and with the Predator, got the half. And the Y-Wing open up with the range 1, but all eyes decides to spend the lock. Oof, just 1 hit. And that is evaded, again with the force spend, but no damage done. And you're halfway there, George.
Yeah, I mean, again, lucky there was basically just being like, well, this is how I go out. I'm going to punch a Y-wing and I might just die here. And then, again, Anakin opened my eyes and Anakin's still alive. So very fortunate.
But definitely playing to win, and it's something that we've spoken about and it's really stuck in my head. We spoke about it a few episodes ago. It would have been easy at that point to take the evade, to worry about the fact that if you lose 2 hull on Anakin, then that you've definitely lost the game. But at this point, if you don't half a Y-wing, you've definitely lost the game. So you did the move that, although risky, would allow you to kind of stay having a chance of winning. And this looks like a kind of 50-50. And so we're coming into the final turn. Nice K-turn there from Ed. Kind of unpredictable, getting himself behind the gas cloud. Doesn't really want to take the strain, but does so. So that Y-wing at a little bit of risk, but on 4 health is the harder to score points off. And we see a talent roll coming in here from Anakin. A little bit unpredictable. But it looks like it's worked out well. Able to again use his ability. Puts himself down to 1 force and gets the boost round to get that primary bullseye arc on. So we're looking at 3 dice into 1. Needs to get 2 damage through to half this Y-wing. Well, looks like a good start. Force spend here, and you guarantee it. Looks like you're thinking about it, George. Got Predator. Ooh, and roll into the blank. Not sure I agree with that choice. But get away with it. Obviously saving that force for defense there, but having praised you for sort of playing to win rather than playing not to lose. That was a risky decision, but anyway, it's paid off. That is 2 damage. Now ahead on points. We've just got this single shot to shrug off. Does have a target lock though. Oh, and this is going to be hit crit. Need exactly that. Evade focus, spending that force that I said you should have spent earlier to stay above half, not take that crit. Obviously, a director would have lost you the game. And that's it. Game over. A convincing win by George, and a really exciting game. Ed, over to you first. How did you sort of enjoy the game, and what lessons from it did you take into the rest of the day?
So I really enjoyed the game. I had a great game, and it swung backwards and forwards really nicely. I felt I was a little bit lucky in that initial engagement, obviously killing those two torrents for not a lot. I thought originally I was behind and managed to claw it back by a bit of luck, and this last bit I was just unsure how I could get away, and unfortunately I couldn't. And he got good dice, and it got away from me, which was a shame, but it was a really good game, so I wasn't too disheartened.
And how did the rest of the day go for you?
It didn't go the best, to be honest. I haven't been playing a huge amount during lockdown. I'm part of the Firestorm group, so I kind of made the effort to join the Firecast to support Nick, Dom, and Pond. So yeah, I'm a little bit rusty, and you kind of saw that with some of the decisions I made and some of the triggers I missed. So yeah, I ended up going 4-2, but had some really close games, some really good games, and a horrible game against Kanan, which made me sad because that was the first time I'd faced Kanan. And yeah, I definitely chose the wrong target priority and left him till the end, which was a massive mistake.
Yeah, I think Kanan is going to be making a lot of players sad over the coming months. And I was going to say, 4-2 doesn't sound too bad to me. So I think you're being a little bit hard on yourself.
I got that the wrong way around. I went 2-4.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough. That's not great. I will agree.
Yeah, but again, I enjoyed myself. It was a good day, and first time I've done that many games playing TTS in a day, and yeah, I was surprised how quickly it zipped by, and I didn't miss the back pain I usually get from playing 6 games in a day. I've hunched over a table, so like sitting in a nice seat all day was quite a nice feeling rather than that kind of crippling back pain.
And having run your list now for 6 games, are there changes you would make to it, or are you pretty happy with the layout?
I'm fairly happy with it. It's been used quite a bit, so I think it's fairly optimized already by other people. I kind of just, as I said at the beginning, I had R3 astromechs and I swapped them for R4s, and that probably was the right call. And so I don't think there's a lot you can do with it, to be honest. Maybe I could drop the thread tracers, but yeah, I'd have 3 points set there, not doing a whole heap. So it's kind of there to give that extra kind of worry especially to larger ships. You got a good chance of getting those thread tracers to hit, and then you got 3 double modded torps coming in after them. So yeah, not really much I would change.
Cool. And George, over to you. I know that you went on to make the cut, which I think is an incredible achievement, given that this is not what I would describe as a meta list. You've played a few games with it before the tournament, but did you learn anything extra during this game? And how did the rest of the day go?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was basically exhausted. Like, the stress of this game kind of destroyed me for the rest of the day, really. Like, I went on to lose my next game, basically making a silly mistake with Obi that put me behind, and then just kind of clung on from there for dear life. Because, yeah, it's a list that very much feels like different day. It could have been 1 and 5.
Yeah, it's a list that feels like it's always one dice roll away from just crumpling, doesn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. And it was kind of just coming to terms with that, of just being like, if I blank out, I blank out. It's going to happen. I'm waiting for it.
And George is the youngest of the 4 of us on the channel today, and I think probably has the blood pressure to deal with this kind of list. I think the rest of us, it might kill.
Yeah, I basically resolved from that moment to basically just go and do like a sort of, a bit of stretching and some kind of mindfulness breathing exercises just to like between each round, just like, and center myself, chill out.
I'm so old I don't even really know what mindfulness means, so I would not have coped at all well. I was much better off recording the games than playing them. Lloyd, I think we'll leave it to you to see us out. A super fun game, and maybe quite a relevant one. We've been struggling to come up with a Republic list for the England XTC team. And I don't know that ETAs or Y-Wings were something really considering. Should we be considering them now?
I think they're both interesting. Both lists kind of ask questions of your opponent for sure. I think George's list is the one that looks more interesting to me. It is a variation on an ace mini swarm, but the fact that you have 2 aces in there makes it quite an interesting variant on it. And in this match, we saw the Torrents kind of get almost destroyed for nothing, and yet they still did their job, right? You ultimately traded the Torrents for Warthog and a bit of a Y-Wing, and that was enough then for the ETAs to just about dig it out at the end. So I think it's certainly an interesting list. I don't know that I would fancy running it for sure, but it's definitely the most interesting Republic list I've seen in a while. And yours is just very solid, right? It's a list that asks questions of your opponent, and it can win big if everything goes right, and it can win big if your opponent makes mistakes. And what we didn't see here particularly was many mistakes from George. So he I think did a good job of limiting the things that you could do with a list that has a surprising number of tricks.
Yeah, definitely with George's decision making. Even though I got the strong dice at the start, yeah, he probably deserved the win.
Oh, I don't know if that's true. I feel like I think the luck was made for an interesting game.
Yeah, I think it was overall very evenly matched. I think that neither of you really made any major mistakes. A couple of triggers missed and confusion about stress aside. In terms of the strategy of the game, it was pretty even. And yeah, just maybe that mid game of getting the Y-wings, because of their poor dial, taking slightly too long to get themselves sorted out again, gave you the space to win it. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it leaves it to me to say thank you very much, guys, for coming on. Thank you for talking us through your game. And thanks to everyone for watching. We'll see you again in a few weeks' time. Goodbye.